The fantastic story unfolds at a prestigious school, where all eyes are drawn to the stunning and graceful Konohana Hinako. Her beauty and elegance captivate everyone, and the students warmly greet her with smiles, wishing her a delightful day. With great excitement, they extend an invitation for her to join a tea party in the garden after classes, and to their pleasant surprise, she eagerly accepts. As Hinako continues through her day, several classmates enthusiastically request her to help with a lesson they struggled to understand in the previous class. Their admiration for her grows with every interaction, as her charm leaves a lasting impression. Meanwhile, Tomonari Itsuki is caught gazing fondly at Hinako by his friends, who quickly intervene, advising him not to entertain any thoughts about her, reminding him that she belongs to a family of significant prestige and status. Yet Itsuki appears weary of the notion, as he is hiding the secret about his commoner background. Itsuki recalls an incident from a few days earlier, when 16-year-old Tomonari Itsuki was wrapping up his final shift at a construction site. His coworkers, seeing it was his last day, kindly encouraged him to take the day off and assured him they'd paid his wages up front. As Itsuki was about to leave, he overheard the workers chatting about the extravagant cars driving by. The buzz was about Kio Academy, a prestigious institution for the elite, which was starting a new term. With a respectful bow, Itsuki expressed his gratitude before heading out. As he left, the workers spoke warmly of him, admiring his work ethic and perseverance despite his quiet nature. They knew he worked hard because he came from a struggling family. Walking home, Itsuki felt a surge of joy. He had finally saved enough to cover his school fees for the second year. But his happiness was short-lived. When he reaches home, he cheerfully announces that he'd received his part-time job's earnings and will prepare a feast with leftover ingredients. But he is met with an eerie silence. Confused, he searches the house only to find a note from his parents wishing him well. He burst into an incredulous laugh. It seems unbelievable that his parents will leave so abruptly. The shock deepens when he discovers that not only are they gone, but they have taken all the money with them. In disbelief, he wanders outside to confirm with a neighbor, who informs him that he has seen his parents leave in the dead of night. The revelation is a crushing blow, and Itsuki collapses to his knees, feeling utterly abandoned. Left alone due to his family's poverty, he struggles with the reality of his parents disappearing overnight. As he trudges down the road, he glances at his palm, where only 200 yen remains. His mind races with worries about paying rent, buying food, and covering school expenses. Just then, a group of high-class girls from Kio Academy passes by. Their refined presence is a stark contrast to his bleak circumstances. He knows the academy is an exclusive haven for the children of influential politicians and wealthy conglomerates, where students enjoy luxury and comfort. Lost in thought, Itsuki's eyes land on the ground, where he spots a Kio Academy student ID lying on the road. A sudden burst of urgency grips him as he calls out to Hinako, who is heading toward the academy, trying to catch her attention before she walks away. Itsuki freezes in shock as a jeep screeches to a halt beside Hinako. Two masked men leap out, forcefully covering her mouth and binding her with alarming speed. Panic surges through him as he shouts for them to stop, realizing in horror that they are abducting her. Desperation propels him forward, and he dashes toward them to intervene. But before he can act, one of the kidnappers grabs him by the collar. Unable to resist, he is dragged into the chaos as they decide to take him too, unwilling to leave behind a witness. In seconds, the jeep speeds away, leaving the street empty. Reaching an old warehouse, the kidnappers cuff Itsuki's hands, ensuring he can't make any attempt to escape, and shove him down beside Hinako. Nervously, he tries to explain that his parents wouldn't be able to pay a single yen for his ransom, but the kidnappers cut him off with a bark, dismissing him as a useless tag-along. Sinking into despair, Itsuki feels a heavy weight settle in his chest. His parents had abandoned him just the night before, and now he's been dragged into this nightmare. It feels like some cruel twist of fate, a punishment he can't escape. The thugs laugh with wicked excitement, boasting about their prize, mentioning she isn't just any girl, she's from the Konohana family, worth an astonishing 300 trillion yen. Her family is a major benefactor of Kio Academy, and the thought of the massive fortune they could secure in ransom makes their eyes gleam with greed. They revel in their plan, confident they've struck gold. Upon realizing she's a student from Kio Academy, Itsuki finds himself captivated by her elegance and charm. Her graceful demeanor and long, silky hair leave him instantly smitten, and he briefly wonders if the kidnappers might have taken her for reasons beyond just ransom. However, his romanticized thoughts are abruptly shattered when she casually demands to use the bathroom. Her nonchalant attitude in such a dire situation baffles him, but he quickly reminds himself that, despite her high-class status, she's still human and nature calls for everyone. As her insistence grows more urgent, even threatening to leak if not allowed to go, Itsuki's panic spikes. One of the gangsters callously dismisses her, saying they don't care if she relieves herself right there. Horrified, Itsuki pleads with her to hold on for both their sakes. Finally, the other kidnapper, busy on a call, instructs his partner to let her use the bathroom, grumbling that it would be a hassle if the place got dirty. The kidnappers reluctantly agree but refuse to unchain them, ensuring they won't try anything. As she steps inside, he stands nervously outside the door, keeping watch. When she emerges and casually asks for tea, his frustration and anxiety skyrocket. Her calm and almost carefree behavior feels completely out of place for someone in such a dangerous situation. Exasperated, the kidnappers shove a bottle of water into her hands and snap at Itsuki, warning him to keep her under control. When she takes the water but spills it, drenching herself, Itsuki can't help but feel shocked. With a touch of disdain, she explains that she isn't accustomed to drinking from PET bottles. Her peculiar behavior amidst such a terrifying situation makes the kidnappers suspicious. Is she truly from the prestigious Konohana family? Itsuki also questions whether all high-class ladies are this peculiar or if she's an exception. Trying to help, he tells her to give the bottle to him. She refuses, thinking he won't return the bottle once he has it. Water trickles down her, forming a puddle, and he moves aside, causing her to fall. Itsuki's worry intensifies when she suddenly tumbles onto the ground. Even the kidnappers grow alarmed, noting that she isn't acting like the dignified lady they expected from the prestigious Konohana family. Though, based on their intel, she's from the high-class lineage, her behavior suggests otherwise. Amused, Itsuki feels that even his parents aren't this troublesome. Kneeling beside her, he gently asks if she can stand up. When she finally stirs, he notices a small scratch on her forehead and quickly stops her from touching it, cautioning that it might get infected. With tears in her eyes, she reluctantly agrees, her sadness evident. As they sit together, she quietly asks why he is there. In a low voice, he explains that he was trying to return her student ID, which she had dropped when the kidnappers suddenly appeared. Hearing this, she looks slightly relieved, admitting that it would prompt a swift rescue. However, she leaves the rest unexplained, instead telling him she's sleepy. Itsuki is taken aback. Who could calmly sleep in such a dangerous situation? His astonishment deepens when she casually asks for a pillow. He could hardly believe his ears. How could someone from such a noble family behave so spoiled and carefree, even demanding comfort in the midst of being kidnapped? Nevertheless, fearing the kidnapper's wrath if he fails to take care of her, he reluctantly offers his legs as a makeshift pillow. To his surprise, she rests her head on his thighs without a hint of hesitation, drifting off happily. But just as he thinks it couldn't get any stranger, she requests a lullaby. Flustered, he apologizes, saying he can't sing. Annoyed, she then demands that he tell her a captivating story instead. However, before he can even think of a tale, Hinako has already fallen into a deep sleep on his lap, displaying a calmness that leaves him baffled. Any other girl in this situation would likely be in tears, but she remains unshaken. Gently brushing a strand of hair away from her face, Itsuki can't help but admire her. Her calm demeanor in the face of danger strangely helps keep him composed too. After a few minutes, Hinako wakes up, and Itsuki's nerves tighten when he hears one of the gangsters yelling into the phone, threatening Hinako's father to pay up or face harm coming to his beloved daughter. As she stirs, Itsuki instinctively squeezes her hand and, with a reassuring smile, promises her that he will protect her no matter how dire the situation becomes. When she asks why he is so determined to help, he stays silent, but inwardly he feels a sense of duty to shield her. He wants to save someone's life, perhaps to find some meaning in his own bleak future. In a way, he is grateful to her for awakening his courage. Hinako's unexpected praise catches him off guard as she calls him a good boy, saying she feels surprisingly at ease around him. Despite being surrounded by servants all her life, she appreciates how naturally he acts, allowing her to let her guard down. Itsuki's face flushes when she gently cups his cheeks and asks for his name before introducing herself. Unknown to them, a few figures are stealthily watching, ready to spring into action. Just as she is about to share something important with him, a sudden crash shatters the tense atmosphere, leaving everyone dazed. The kidnappers are momentarily blinded as a group from Hinako's family storms in for a rescue and immediately secures the two criminals. As the rescuers report to Shizune, a maid who arrived with the rescue team, they inform her that they have secured 3 individuals. In the chaotic struggle, Itsuki finds himself being apprehended. Shizune looks perplexed, as she had only been expecting 2 kidnappers. Ignoring Itsuki, she rushes to Hinako, addressing her respectfully and with deep concern, asking if she is alright and apologizing for their delayed arrival. Hinako points toward Itsuki and insists he isn't a criminal. With a brief apology, Shizune quickly releases him. When Itsuki protests that he had been cuffed as well, clearly proving his innocence, she gives him a skeptical glance, as though still weighing the possibility of his involvement with the kidnappers. Before he can explain further, she dismisses him with a curt nod and turns back to Hinako, announcing that it's time to return home. To Itsuki's astonishment, Hinako requests that they take him along, stating boldly that she wants him. Shizune immediately complies with a nod, reassuring Hinako that she will take care of the necessary details and ushering Itsuki into the car with them. Inside the car, Hinako casually rests her head on Itsuki's shoulder, instructing him to wake her when they arrive home. Shizune observes the scene thoughtfully, her sharp eyes hinting at an understanding of why Hinako has taken an interest in him. Noticing Itsuki's anxiety and confusion, she calmly reassures him that he'll learn their destination soon enough. However, what truly unsettles Itsuki is when Shizune casually reveals that they already investigated his background. She lists off the details: he's 16, has no siblings, lives with his parents, and covers all their expenses, parents who, as of last night, abandoned him and took his savings. Stunned by how much they know, Itsuki protests about his privacy being invaded. Unfazed, Shizune coldly reminds him not to underestimate the reach of the Konohana family's information network. Itsuki feels a wave of hopelessness wash over him when Shizune reveals that she knows about his plans to start high school the next day and how he still hasn't managed to pay the tuition fee. Though he never wanted to believe his parents could be so heartless, it's devastating to hear that they had been plotting to abandon him as soon as his paycheck came in, money he had been saving to cover his education. As the weight of his troubles sinks in, unpaid bills, looming tuition, and the looming threat of losing his home, Itsuki feels overwhelmed. His eyes widen in disbelief when Shizune suddenly offers him a position working for her lady, a lifeline he never expected in the depths of his despair. When Shizune extends the offer for Itsuki to work for Lady Hinako, he is overwhelmed with confusion. To clarify, she begins explaining the Konohana group in detail. Itsuki feels taken aback and anxious about the invasion of his privacy when Shizune, unimpressed by his lack of knowledge about the group, points out that she already knows he has an account at Konohana Bank. She elaborates that the Konohana Group is a powerful enterprise overseeing city banks and major trading companies with a staggering net worth of 300 trillion yen. Its influence is not limited to Japan, it extends across international borders. His confusion deepens as Shizune reveals that the elegant girl resting on his shoulder is none other than the daughter of the Konohana Group's president, Konohana Hinako. Shizune, who serves as Hinako's maid, explains that she is now offering him a job in Lady Hinako's service. Itsuki grows indignant, assuming they want him to become a maid like Shizune, but she quickly corrects him, stating that he would be a household staff member instead. His face flushes with embarrassment and bewilderment when she adds that, while most staff undergo rigorous training, he seems to have caught Lady Hinako's favor, making him a rare exception. The situation becomes even more awkward when half-asleep Hinako unexpectedly hugs him, her scent carrying a faint sweetness. Before his thoughts can drift any further, Shizune shoots him a stern glare, warning him that if he dares to misbehave with their lady, she won't hesitate to deal with him harshly. A few minutes later, Shizune gently wakes Hinako as they arrive at the Grand Konohana Villa. Itsuki's jaw drops in astonishment at the sight before him. A long line of servants awaits Hinako, and the villa itself is so vast and opulent that he can't help but feel embarrassed at the thought of his own tiny home in comparison. The sheer scale and luxury of the place send a shiver down his spine. Shizune remarks casually that he should get accustomed to such surroundings if he intends to work for Lady Hinako. Still, he hesitates, uncertain whether he will accept the offer. When Shizune asks Hinako about her plans for the day, Hinako replies that she intends to sleep, and the servants take her response lightly. Shizune then mentions her plan to show Itsuki around, assuming someone would need to accompany Hinako in her place. But to everyone's surprise, a sleepy Hinako announces that she has no intention of resting and will stay with Itsuki instead. Her sudden change of plans leaves all the maids, including Shizune, stunned and a bit concerned. Itsuki finds their shock strange, considering Hinako had slept through most of the trip. Shizune then leads the way, suggesting the pair follow her. As they ascend the stairs, Itsuki is taken aback when Hinako unexpectedly holds his hand. He gently helps her climb the stairs, leaving everyone bewildered. After a few moments, Shizune knocks on a door, seeking permission to enter the room. Inside, a gentleman greets them warmly and introduces himself as Hinako's father and the president of the Konohana group. With a laugh, he clarifies that he is only in charge of one of the group's companies and playfully downplays his importance. When Shizune corrects him, saying the head of the Konohana group has a penchant for joking, he chuckles again, noting Itsuki's nervousness in the formal setting. Suddenly, the man adopts a more serious demeanor. He leans forward in his chair and inquires about Itsuki, mentioning that he has been informed of Itsuki's involvement in the kidnapping incident with his daughter. His curiosity is piqued, as he has never seen Hinako so attached to anyone before, and he wants to know if anything had happened between them during the ordeal. While Hinako sleeps, she leans against Itsuki, prompting him to gently wipe her mouth as he denies doing anything particular. His confusion deepens when her father remarks on the apparent chemistry between them, explaining that Hinako has been searching for a caretaker who would treat her without fear. Due to his high-ranking position, Mr. Konohana has struggled to find someone who fits her criteria. However, he suggests that since she has serendipitously found Itsuki herself, she is unwilling to let him go. As Itsuki glances at Hinako's peaceful, drowsy expression, he remembers her saying during the kidnapping that she had many servants, but all were strict. Turning to Shizune, Mr. Konohana instructs her to tell Itsuki everything about Hinako, as he is to become her caretaker. Shizune shows him a video of the elegant Kio Academy, where Hinako strolls gracefully through the halls, greeted warmly by students and faculty who invite her to various events. In the classroom, she impresses the teacher by solving difficult problems, garnering admiration from all her classmates. But as he watches, Itsuki's confusion grows, especially upon hearing the name Konohana mentioned repeatedly. Then he is stunned when Shizune reveals that the poised lady in the video is none other than Hinako. Mr. Konohana explains that Hinako can present herself as the epitome of a perfect lady in public, but things are quite different behind closed doors. Shizune shows him another video with Hinako's previous maid. After class, Hinako lies exhausted on a bench, while the maid desperately tries to wake her up for gym class. Too lazy and tired to get ready herself, Hinako casually orders the maid to dress her in the gym outfit. When informed that a report of unauthorized credit card use has come in from the Konohana family, Hinako nonchalantly mumbles that she had lost the card nearly 3 months earlier. After the video ends, Mr. Konohana explains that Hinako's true nature is a blend of sophistication in public and carefree hedonism in private. Her constant switching between these two states has taken a toll on her previous caretaker, who resigned due to a severe gastrointestinal condition brought on by the stress. As Itsuki looks at the slumbering Hinako in disbelief, her father reveals that it is necessary for her to have someone who can manage both sides of her personality. He expresses hope that Itsuki is the right person for the task, even calling it a personal request from Hinako herself. Understanding the full extent of the situation, Itsuki finally speaks up, albeit hesitant, admitting that he is penniless and asks if he will be compensated for the job. After Mr. Konohana informs Itsuki that the job will pay 20,000 yen on top of 3 meals a day, Itsuki is utterly shocked. It's several times higher than any of his previous salaries. Noticing his reaction, Mr. Konohana assumes the amount is too low and immediately raises the offer to 50,000 yen. When Itsuki hesitantly mentions that he would be fine with just 8,000, Mr. Konohana sternly clarifies the seriousness of the role. He explains that Itsuki's responsibilities will extend far beyond what he can imagine. Hinako needs to maintain her image as the perfect lady to secure an ideal marriage prospect. Despite the Konohana family's modest success lately, Mr. Konohana can't afford to neglect his daughter. Itsuki is further informed that, although Hinako appears to embody elegance at parties and school, in truth, she is still lethargic and lacks motivation. The caretaker's job is to uphold her polished image while keeping her true nature a secret. After emphasizing the gravity of the position, Mr. Konohana informs Itsuki that being Hinako's caretaker is not just about looking after her, but also about safeguarding the family's reputation. Finally, he asks Itsuki to confirm his desired salary. With the pay settled at 20,000 yen and his room assigned, Itsuki closes the door behind him, collapsing onto the bed with relief after the intense situation. He recalls how, during the interview, Hinako had nearly slipped, and he instinctively placed his hand on her face to steady her. Her father's furious glare and stern warning that he'd kill anyone who laid a hand on his daughter make the memory even more unsettling. Reflecting on the harrowing encounter, Itsuki shudders at the thought of what could have happened. Looking out his room's window, Itsuki marvels at the luxurious surroundings. Just then, Shizune enters, respectfully congratulating him on his employment and expressing hope that they will work well together. She introduces herself as Hinako's maid and presents him with a Kio Academy uniform, advising him to change. She mentions that she will guide him through his various responsibilities as Hinako's caretaker, suggesting he become acquainted with his duties. After changing into the uniform, which fits him perfectly, Itsuki finds himself bewildered by the thought of attending such a prestigious academy. Shizune informs him that since the previous caretaker had suddenly resigned, he will have to enroll in the school. Feeling self-conscious, he worries that his background as a commoner will make it hard for him to fit in or make friends at such a high-ranking institution. He quickly chastises himself for such thoughts. Shizune then approaches him closely, adjusting his uniform and asking if he feels nervous about his new position. She advises him that, as Hinako's caretaker, he must carry himself with the proper manners and maintain a polished appearance at all times. Passing him a revised resume, she explains that it includes new details, such as his affiliation with the Konohana group, since regular caretakers aren't allowed at Kio Academy. The resume states that he is a child of a family associated with the Konohana group to avoid arousing suspicion. His ambition to become a businessman is also noted. As Itsuki reviews the information, he begins to feel a sense of relief. The elaborate cover story will make it difficult for anyone to uncover his true role. Itsuki is left perplexed when Shizune hands him a bulky and heavy caretaker's manual, instructing him to read and adhere to its guidelines. Should he encounter any difficulties, he's to refer to the manual or ask her. As he struggles to absorb the dense information, Shizune places a stack of textbooks and reference manuals in his hands. These supplementary materials are necessary because, as a new student at such a prestigious academy, he needs to master the contents of each subject before dinner to keep up. She warns that without this preparation, he will struggle to blend in as a commoner. Furthermore, she emphasizes the importance of achieving high grades, as he will be accompanying Hinako at all times and needs to maintain an academic standard befitting her status. She then mentions that he must also learn both etiquette and self-defense, leaving him bewildered. When Itsuki hesitantly asks if she truly means self-defense, Shizune smirks and, with a sharp tone, questions whether he is afraid of combat. Thinking she is merely testing him, he confidently responds that he is no stranger to physical exertion and has endured grueling labor before. He figures that if he intends to keep working here, he can't afford to be easily overpowered. She nods and instructs him to practice self-defense after completing his other tasks. By the end of the day, after tackling his studies and fulfilling all the assigned duties, Itsuki finds himself engaged in self-defense training with Shizune. As they spar, Shizune suddenly grabs his wrist and, with a swift martial arts maneuver, thrusts him to the ground. He bows before her in embarrassment while she stands over him like a battle-hardened warrior. Her strength and skill catch him off guard, making him feel as if she is bending the arm of a child. Exhausted from the day's events, Itsuki stumbles into his room, utterly drained. He collapses onto the bed, feeling a deep fatigue from his first day, yet determined not to complain. Just as he is about to rest, he lets out a startled shout upon noticing Hinako calmly asleep on his bed, dressed in her nightgown. He instinctively demands to know why she is there, but then recalls Shizune's instructions about always addressing her with respect and proper manners. However, his confusion lingers. Why is she in his bed? Turning to the manual for guidance, Itsuki discovers a section explaining that when inside the mansion, Hinako has a habit of falling asleep nearly anywhere. If awakened abruptly, she would likely end up in a foul mood. The manual advises allowing her to rest after escorting her back to her room. Screaming that's too late, Itsuki paces around his room, unsure of what to do next. Just then, his phone buzzes with a notification. When Itsuki checks his phone, he sees a message from a friend asking about going to school together, as he had forgotten to mention his plans. Unsure how to explain his situation, he receives another message stating that if he doesn't want to accompany her, she has other friends to go with. As Itsuki hesitates over how to respond, his phone suddenly begins ringing. Before he can answer, he is startled by the presence of Hinako, who has silently appeared behind him and is now asking about the caller. When he explains that it is his childhood friend inquiring about school, Hinako swiftly takes the phone from his hand, marches back to the bed, and wraps herself up in the blanket, mentioning she's confiscating the device to maintain the tranquility of the night. Trembling slightly, Itsuki nervously asks her to return his phone, but she sharply warns him that she dislikes his timid tone. She insists that he speak to her naturally, without any fear. As he stammers that Shizune had instructed him to use that manner of speech, Hinako coolly informs him that unless he adopts a more relaxed tone, he will not be getting his phone back. Struggling to adjust his demeanor, Itsuki manages to speak more casually, albeit with some confusion. Please, Hinako wishes him a good day tomorrow, and without acknowledging his request for her to return to her own room, promptly falls back asleep on his bed, leaving him standing there, utterly perplexed. The next day, as they prepare for school, Shizune respectfully questions Itsuki about his seat in the car. Recalling the guidelines about seating etiquette, he confidently replies that he will sit on the rear right side. He explains that if the car is being driven by a chauffeur, the seating arrangement goes from the rear left to the center, with the person of the lowest rank seated beside the chauffeur. However, if the driver is a companion, the person of the highest status would sit in the front. Shizune admires his understanding, complimenting him on mastering the rules through her rigorous teachings. The servants bow gracefully, wishing them a good day and reminding Itsuki to take care of Hinako. As they settle into the car, Hinako, with a sleepy expression, lazily orders them to head back home because she feels drowsy. Shizune, sitting beside the driver, calmly informs her that they will only follow her wishes after the mandatory 8 hours of study. Addressing Itsuki, Shizune notes that according to his new role, he and Hinako supposedly live in separate houses. She mentions dropping him off near the academy to maintain appearances. When Itsuki asks hesitantly if he and Hinako will be on their own at school, the maid tells him not to fret, as a third person will discreetly follow them. She further explains that Hinako's recent kidnapping incident happened because she left school without permission, so now it's his responsibility to prevent such situations. Suddenly, Hinako sharply points at him, reminding him to address her normally. Shizune then clarifies that using an informal tone could set a bad example for others, prompting her to suggest that he can speak informally when they are in private but must maintain a respectful demeanor in public. With a resigned sigh, the maid agrees, instructing him to remember his manners on school grounds to avoid any unnecessary friction, as his status at the academy is not particularly high. Their discussion is abruptly interrupted when they arrive at the academy. Hinako casually demands that Itsuki carry her into the school. Shizune immediately intervenes, deeming it inappropriate, but Hinako, with a mischievous smile, remarks that she likes his scent and wants him to carry her because of it. Shizune gives him a pleading, hopeful look, and jokingly suggests she might want to take note of his appealing scent for future reference. Stunned, Itsuki politely declines. As Itsuki steps out of the luxury vehicle, he becomes acutely aware of his surroundings. He instinctively feels the presence of a vigilant guardian, hidden somewhere in the shadows, ensuring his safety as part of the Konohana family. Just as he is about to leave, Shizune calls him, handing him a satchel and instructing him to use it if Hinako ever becomes unreasonable. With a bow, she reminds him to attend to Lady Hinako with the utmost care. As they walk towards the school, Hinako continues to exhibit her languid and drowsy demeanor, expressing a desire to return home. He gently urges her to comport herself appropriately. Hinako dismisses his concerns, claiming that no one is nearby so she can behave naturally. Itsuki is impressed by her uncanny ability to detect the gazes of others and is determined to safeguard her image as a revered young lady. Just as he approaches the entrance of the Kio Academy, Japan's most prestigious institution, the grandeur of the building catches him off guard. He is startled as some students suddenly approach Hinako, wishing her a good morning. Hinako catches the attention of other students, and her poise and beauty are met with admiration. She is a world apart from the sleepy girl who drooled on his pillow just the night before. Itsuki, distracted by the sight, reflects on her transformation. Hinako interrupts his thoughts, asking if he has anything urgent to attend to, and suggesting they head together. They enter the staff room, and the teacher in charge of their class, Fukushima Misono, adjusts her spectacles, smiling warmly at Itsuki. He mentions being under her guidance from now on. When she asks if they are acquaintances, he stammers and Hinako interjects with a smile, mentioning that their families are on very good terms, so she's being designated to show him around. Teacher Misano admires Itsuki's fortune in having Hinako as his guide. Slightly flustered, he replies affirmatively. Misano smiles and instructs them to head to class. In class, Itsuki feels slightly awkward as he settles into a chair. There's no applause or special attention given to his arrival, but he is impressed by the maturity of his classmates. As the teacher begins the lecture on mathematical integration, Itsuki grows increasingly anxious, as this is a lesson usually learned at the end of his third year, and he feels exhausted by the end of the hour, though grateful for Shizune's help in preparing him. Glancing at Hinako, he notices a girl asking her for assistance with the day's lesson, which Hinako happily agrees to. Just then, a boy, Taishu Katsuya, approaches Itsuki and chastises him for not greeting him as a newcomer. The students react dramatically, and another girl, Karen, playfully smacks Katsuya on the head, warning him not to frighten Itsuki. He quickly apologizes, citing that he was joking. When Katsuya remarks on how determined Itsuki seems to keep up with the class, Itsuki curiously asks if Katsuya has been watching him. Katsuya reassures him that many transferred students experience similar situations. Karen then asks about his family, since his name doesn't suggest he's from a particularly well-known family. Itsuki explains that his family is in the 8 business, though they are not a particularly large company. Karen shares that most new students either come for prestige or due to family circumstances. Katsuya adds that students from similar backgrounds group together to support each other. He and Karen are also from the commoner-born student group, and they offer to help Itsuki adjust. Despite his nervousness, Itsuki remembers his pay of 20,000 yen per hour, along with lodging and meals, and decides to embrace his role. However, Katsuya suddenly asks about his relationship with Hinako, having seen them enter the school together. Itsuki explains that their parents are close friends, which is why she offered to show him the way to the academy. Katsuya, with a menacing look, questions if they are fiancés or something similar. Itsuki emphatically denies it, and Katsuya laughs, playfully gripping his shoulder, telling Itsuki to not surprise him. Karen then explains that students assume Hinako already has a fiancé, especially now that Itsuki has appeared with her at school. Itsuki, puzzled, remembers that Hinako's father is currently searching for a suitable match for her, indicating she likely doesn't have a fiancé yet. Katsuya, grinning, suggests Itsuki should introduce someone cute for him since he doesn't have a fiancé yet. After classes, Itsuki feels more at ease and heads to the old student council building for lunch with Hinako, who is waiting for him. Katsuya and Karen invite him to join them, but he declines, fibbing that he needs to contact his family. On the rooftop, he finds Hinako holding her packed lunch. He wishes her a good day, and she reminds him to speak to her normally. He agrees with a smile, glad that there's no one else around. As they settle in for lunch, Itsuki is astonished to see that Hinako still looks half asleep, her food falling off her chopsticks. Instead of properly eating herself, she opens her mouth, signaling that she wants him to feed her, observing her lazy, laid-back demeanor and recalling their first encounter. When she struggled to drink from a water bottle, he quickly understands why she needs someone to take care of her. As she takes her first bite, Hinako savors the meal with a delighted expression, exclaiming how much she enjoys the food. Intrigued, Itsuki asks if she always eats lunch here, mentioning that he heard about the school's cafeteria. She explains that she dislikes drawing attention to herself and prefers this secluded spot, where she can enjoy her meal in peace and eat whatever she likes. When Itsuki asks if there are any foods she dislikes, Hinako casually lists carrots, bell peppers, green peas, and several more. Hearing her name so many vegetables, he assumes she dislikes vegetables in general. She nods with a smile, confirming his suspicion. Watching her lazy demeanor, he worries that if Katsuya or Karen sees this side of her, they will be completely stunned. Gently wiping a smudge of food from her cheek, he voices his concerns about the demanding schedule at this prestigious academy, admitting that he finds it challenging to keep up with the classes. Hinako earnestly reminds him to prioritize his studies, warning that failing to do so could put his caretaker position at risk. Sharing her concern, Itsuki agrees, fully aware of how crucial this role is for him and how losing it would be a significant setback. As they talk, she encourages him to eat his lunch. Opening his bento, Itsuki's eyes light up at the sight of the delicious meal inside. Taking his first bite, he is pleasantly surprised and delighted by the mix of meat, fish, and salad. When she asks which food he likes most, he admits he enjoys everything but expresses a particular fondness for the egg roll, which he tries first. He feels flustered when she offers to feed him another piece with her chopsticks, but noticing her casual demeanor and lack of embarrassment, he steadies himself and accepts the bite from her hand. Curious about whether he genuinely enjoyed the food, Hinako asks for his opinion. Itsuki agrees but hesitantly asks if she is okay with giving him her portion. She responds with a casual shrug, explaining that as his master, it's perfectly acceptable for her to share her lunch with him, and it would be disappointing if he didn't like it. Itsuki continues to feed Hinako, and out of curiosity, asks about her previous caretakers and why they left. She admits she has no idea, only recalling that the last caretaker stayed for just 2 weeks, while the longest lasted about a month. With a puzzled expression, he wonders audibly why anyone would quit such a favorable job, especially when it offers better conditions than grueling, low-paying alternatives. Casually, Itsuki mentions his pay of 20,000 yen per day, including 3 meals, and adds that despite the demanding routine, he values the opportunity to receive an education alongside his work. Hinako's eyes widen in surprise. Suddenly, she questions if he isn't interested in marrying her, baffling him. Bewildered, Itsuki notes that aside from his interest in her, he likely doesn't see himself as someone in a position to marry her, considering she is the daughter of one of the wealthiest traders in Japan. With a hopeful tone, she pleads with him not to quit his job. Itsuki almost begins to explain his reasons for staying but stops, noticing her growing drowsiness. When he offers her a pillow, Hinako crawls toward him and rests her head on his thigh, murmuring a compliment about how comfortable it feels. Watching her drift into sleep, he finds the situation unusual but realizes he doesn't feel particularly uncomfortable. Itsuki reflects on the peculiar nature of their relationship. Regardless, he relaxes, accepting the moment without complaint. As Itsuki drifts into thought, the sudden ringing of his phone snaps him back to reality. On the other end, Shizune's sharp voice demands immediate attention, scolding him for taking too long to answer. She firmly informs him that until he becomes more accustomed to his responsibilities as a caretaker, she will be checking in on him regularly via phone. Inquiring about Hinako, since they're in the middle of their break, Itsuki replies that she is asleep and that he isn't facing any issues. After discussing a few more topics, he asks Shizune about the quick turnover of previous caretakers. She explains that they were all appointed by her father, meaning they were indirectly working for Kagen-sama. Because of this arrangement, Hinako felt uncomfortable, and as a result, they ended up behaving more like her servants than caretakers. Curious about Hinako's feelings towards servants, Itsuki learns from Shizune that she dislikes the tense atmosphere they create. Shizune further clarifies that he is the first commoner they hired. While searching for a caretaker, Hinako recommended him, and they decided to take him in as an experiment. Itsuki is shocked yet impressed by how swiftly they handle the administrative tasks. Changing the subject, Shizune inquires if he has anyone close to him at school, and he mentions that he gets along well with Karen and Katsuya. His shock grows when she reveals that both of them belong to very wealthy families, and she instructs him to report to her if he encounters any trouble or meets new people. Feeling betrayed, he grapples with the realization that they are not just commoner students like him. Suddenly, he is startled when Hinako asks about his worries, unaware she is already awake. He confides in her about his concerns regarding their affluent classmates, fearing that if they discover his background, it could cause trouble for the Konohana family. Hinako is taken aback when he suddenly asks why she chose him as her caretaker. With a bright smile, she explains that she appreciates his honest nature and enjoys how he genuinely cares for her, especially since he stepped up during her kidnapping. His surprise deepens at her candid confession, leading him to wonder if she is only half awake. Just as he prepares to ask her more, the school bell rings, signaling the start of classes. She lazily suggests skipping the afternoon sessions, but he firmly discourages her from doing so. After the break during the afternoon class, the teacher poses a question to Katsuya. When he hesitates, admitting he doesn't know the answer, the teacher unexpectedly calls on Hinako. She gracefully solves the entire problem, astonishing everyone, especially Itsuki, given that she had initially expressed a desire to skip class after the break. Once the lecture ends, Karen expresses her disappointment in Katsuya for failing to answer the question. He quickly steps in with an excuse, claiming he simply overlooked one problem during his preparation. Hearing this, Itsuki worries about how much more effort he needs to put in to keep up at the academy. Itsuki is startled to spot Hinako in the hallway and makes an excuse to head to the bathroom to follow her. As Itsuki notices Hinako going to the restroom, his phone rings. Shizune, asking for his time, explains that Hinako has dropped her wallet, which contains a tracking device. She mentions that the wallet's signal is misaligned with her current location. He deduces it must be in the restroom. Realizing that restrooms are usually quiet places where dropped items might go unnoticed, she agrees. To his astonishment, she firmly orders him to retrieve the wallet. The thought of entering the girl's bathroom leaves him in utter disbelief, but her unyielding insistence forces him to comply. Frustrated, he grips his hair, unaware of the curious stares from other students nearby. Just then, a stunning and elegant girl approaches Itsuki, asking if he's okay. He looks up, noticing her flowing long hair, and despite his confusion, she introduces herself with a poised smile as Tenuji Mirai, the only daughter of the head of the Tenuji group. When Itsuki fails to recognize the name, her expression shifts to disbelief that he doesn't know about the Tenuji group. Apologizing for his ignorance, Itsuki braces for her reaction, only to be met with intense anger. With a fiery tone, Miri vehemently explains that her family's a conglomerate group that oversees all iron ore mining, and it stands as one of Japan's largest chemical producers. Her commanding presence fills the air as she proudly declares they are on equal footing with the Konohana group. Still puzzled, Itsuki admits that the only name he recognizes is the Konohana group. Miri's expression falters for a moment, a flicker of jealousy crossing her face as she realizes her family's name isn't as familiar to him as Hinako's. Slightly annoyed by the anonymity in comparison, she purses her lips but quickly regains her composure. Noticing his gaze on her, Miri smoothly shifts her demeanor, adopting a polite tone and asking him what seems to be the issue. Seizing the moment, Itsuki hesitantly explains his predicament, mentioning that he needs to retrieve a wallet from the ladies' restroom. With a nod, Miri agrees to fetch the wallet for him. After a few moments, she returns, handing it to him and exclaiming in shock, "How does a man know about a lady's wallet being dropped?" He hesitates before chuckling nervously, sensing that she might be an adversary of Hinako. To avoid complications, he cleverly claims that the wallet's owner asked him to look for it, and with a mischievous grin, adds that he deduced it was in the restroom through a process of elimination. Her expression dims slightly as she realizes he is just an assistant to someone from a higher family. She sternly explains that everyone at this academy has a promising future. She warns if he lets anyone undermine him, he'll lose his chance to fight his battles. Shyly, he manages to mutter, "He'll be more careful next time." Seeing his lack of confidence, she firmly instructs him to fix his posture, asserting that true confidence is reflected in one's stance. With an air of determination, she cheerfully offers to be there for him if he encounters any issues in the future, leaving him with her infectious energy before walking away. Just as she prepares to leave, she halts abruptly at his puzzled remark about whether dyeing her hair is prohibited at school. She gives him a bewildered look, questioning if he's suggesting that her hair is merely a coat of color. He denies it. She stumbles over her words and rushes off, disappointment evident in her voice as she asserts that she did not dye her hair. Embarrassment washes over him, leaving beads of sweat on his forehead for having unintentionally offended her. After the final lecture, his new friends approach him, celebrating his successful first day and suggesting a party to mark the occasion. He immediately declines, apologizing and explaining that he needs to head home soon. Katsuya expresses disappointment at his refusal, acknowledging that first days often go this way. Karen encourages him to plan a party for another time. Both friends cheerfully assure him that he can reach out to them for help if he decides to host a gathering and also for guidance in navigating the academy. Determined to fulfill his duty, he decides to follow Hinako and spots her in the school store, purchasing bread. Curiosity piqued, he stealthily trails her as she walks suspiciously behind the trees, a path few venture. Pushing aside the bushes, he is taken aback to discover her feeding fish. He muses that Hinako embodies both an artistic spirit and a gentle love for animals, yet he feels confused, unsure whether her actions stem from innocent affection or envious spite when she mentions wanting to be like the fish, who simply open their mouths for food. Sitting beside her, he shares his thoughts about fish experiencing pain that humans often overlook. He gently reminds her that they should head home since Shizune will be waiting for them, but she refuses, claiming she doesn't want to leave this tranquil spot with so few people around, especially since she has a mountain of lessons to tackle upon arriving home. Frustrated that they can't remain at school indefinitely, he tries to coax her to stand up. But she lies down on the ground, exuding a sense of laziness that heightens his helplessness. He dreads she'll only encounter more troubles if she continues lazing around. Recalling Shizune's advice about using what's inside the bag in case of trouble, he opens it with a rustling sound, instantly igniting her excitement. Ainako jumps up and rushes toward him with elation, leaving him astounded by her sudden burst of energy. Realizing she craves chips, he proposes giving them to her if she agrees to go home with him. He's utterly shocked when she eagerly bends down, ready to accompany him solely for the chips. As they make their way to the car, Itsuki apologizes to Shizune for being late, while Hinako happily climbs into the vehicle, munching on chips. Once inside, he updates Shizune that it all went according to plan, recounting how they split ways earlier and managed to regroup without drawing attention. Noticing the crumbs and bits of noodles spilling from Hinako as she eats, he gasps in exasperation. Hinako, unfazed, explains with a shrug that this is just how she eats chips, leaving Itsuki struggling to stifle a laugh. Seeing the confusion on his face, Shizune smiles and informs him that giving him a pack of chips this morning turned out to be a smart move since they're Hinako's favorite snack. However, she quickly adds that Hinako cannot indulge in them excessively, which piques his curiosity. A surge of sympathy wells up in him as Shizune explains that such snacks are deemed unhealthy and unsuitable for a lady of the Konohana family. Though it's just a simple potato chip, the revelation that Hinako's meals and much of her life are meticulously controlled by her father, Kagen-sama, shocks him. It dawns on him that being from a wealthy family can mean a lack of personal freedom, perhaps even more stifling than the life of a commoner. Playfully likening herself to a fish, she asks him to feed her. Holding out a chip, he offers it to Hinako, who eagerly accepts it, savoring the snack with a look of pure contentment. Turning to Itsuki with a calm voice, Shizune reminds him not to let Kagen-sama know about this. He nods and continues feeding her, while she eats with a relaxed demeanor. Upon returning home after a long day at school, he is promptly directed to prepare for tomorrow's classes. Next, he embarks on a lesson in etiquette, where he discovers some fascinating differences. In England, the fork and knife should be positioned at 6 o'clock, while in France, they rest at 3 o'clock. After the manners class, Shizune informs him about his upcoming self-defense training, where she will teach him jujitsu. She begins with a warm-up instructing him to complete 100 rolls. Observing Itsuki's unwavering determination despite his exhaustion, she compliments him on his well-trained physique due to his part-time job experience. After defeating him multiple times during the sparring sessions, she advises him to enhance his defensive techniques, pointing out that his feeble attacks won't hold up against skilled adversaries like kidnappers. As fatigue sets in, he requests a break with a weary expression. His frustration mounts when she disregards his plea and resumes their sparring. After 2 grueling hours of relentless practice, she finally announces the end of the lesson. Grateful, he collapses onto the floor, panting heavily. Shizune offers her hand and asks if he can stand while complimenting him for being a quick learner. Just as he reaches to take her hand, she playfully admonishes him about his poor etiquette skills, prompting him to apologize. She then hands him profiles of his classmates and instructs him to read through them while soaking in a bath after their intense practice. He feels an overwhelming sense of frustration and irritation at the realization that he must study even during his bath. However, he quickly calms himself, reminding himself that he earns 20,000 yen per hour. As he holds the profile of his classmates, the thought of Tanauji crosses his mind, prompting him to mention that he has met her, even though she isn't part of their class. Upon hearing her name, Shizune ponders thoughtfully before he curiously inquires if anything is amiss with her. She explains that while it isn't a significant issue, there are persistent rumors about a poor relationship between Lady Mirai and Lady Hinako, making it a somewhat delicate subject. Shizune expresses her confusion about whether Lady Mirai truly believes the rumors about Lady Hinako, but mentions that the Konohana and Tennoji groups are of similar size, leading to occasional conflicts and creating a tense atmosphere between them. After listening to her insights, he changes into his bath attire and concludes that the dynamics between the two girls are indeed complicated. As he walks toward the bathroom, he is startled by Hinako, who emerges from her hiding spot and comments that he reeks of sweat. He casually informs her that he is heading back to his room for a bath, but to his surprise, she takes his hand and instructs him to follow her. His confusion deepens as he enters her room, where he is captivated by the opulence surrounding him. Every piece of furniture and decoration seems more luxurious than anything in his room. His astonishment grows when she points out the bath area, which resembles more of a swimming pool than a simple bathing space. He is bewildered by her intentions, rendered speechless and nearly frozen in shock when she starts stripping and invites him to bathe with her. However, it is hardly what he imagined as she wears her swimming attire. He guesses that she may feel lonely in such a large bathing space. As he tries to ignore his growing self-consciousness, he can't help but feel drawn to her charm. During their bath, he opens the profile to read following Shizune's instructions. As he already knows Katsuya and Karen, he is further astounded to discover that all the students have prestigious connections, either from high-profile companies or political backgrounds. Curious, he asks Hinako if she has any close friends, only to be shocked to learn that she doesn't have a single friend, despite being surrounded by so many students. He concludes that perhaps she is treated differently, whether for better or worse, because it seems all the students are merely her followers rather than true friends. With a hint of curiosity, he asks her if she has ever wished for a friend. After a moment of reflection, she looks at him with joyful innocence and declares that she doesn't need anyone else as long as she has him. Overwhelmed with happiness, he feels a flush of warmth as he realizes the depth of trust she places in him. Just as he processes this, he is caught off guard when she innocently instructs him to wash her hair. When he expresses his confusion, she explains that Shizune typically handles that task, but since he is her caretaker now, it is his responsibility. With no additional choice, he begins washing her hair and is struck by how silky and soft it feels, a stark contrast to boys' hair. As he applies shampoo, Hinako feels uncomfortable and casually tries to remove her swimming outfit, thinking it unnecessary to wear clothes while bathing. He quickly shuts his eyes in embarrassment, exclaiming that it isn't appropriate for boys and girls to bathe together. Hinako reassures him that she's only wearing the outfit because Shizune requested it. Realizing the situation, he awkwardly asks if Shizune knows they are bathing together. His heart races as he suddenly notices her piercing gaze fix on him, making him acutely aware of the tension. With a sense of urgency, he finishes washing her hair, only to be bewildered when she sweetly smiles and requests that he wash her hair daily, rendering him speechless. Their moment is interrupted by the arrival of other maids, who respectfully instruct her to put on her clothes and follow them. Embarrassed, Itsuki turns to Shizune and asks how long she has been watching them. She calmly informs him that she has been keeping an eye on them from the beginning. Mentioning she has placed his outfit in the dressing room and hands him a jar filled with pills. His shock escalates as she explains that these pills are intended to counteract the side effects of antidepressants and anticonvulsants, designed to induce artificial erectile dysfunction. Still bewildered, he learns that she suggests taking the pill if he anticipates having any indecent thoughts about Hinako in the future. Frustrated and overwhelmed by the entire situation, he screams in irritation, expressing his fear that taking the pills will make him a maid. The next day, they gather for a badminton match between classes A and B, instructed to arrange the girls on the eastern courts and the boys on the western courts. Noticing the worried expression on Itsuki's face, Katsuya asks if he is okay. Upon admiring Itsuki's muscular physique, he compliments him, causing Itsuki to blush and explain that he trains occasionally. Still, he remains perplexed by the vast gym space, and Katsuya reveals that it spans over 3,000 square meters. Their conversation pauses as the instructor announces free training after warming up, followed by individual matches. Feeling anxious about his first physical education class at the academy, Itsuki worries that poor performance could lead to his dismissal and fires up. While warming up, Katsuya appears impressed with Itsuki's flexibility. During their practice session, Itsuki relaxes, realizing it feels more natural than expected. Katsuya suggests they take a break until their turn for a match. While they chat, Karen joins them, waving hello to Itsuki. She compliments him with a smile, noting that he seems skilled in the game. Feeling confident, Itsuki responds that he is quite self-assured about his sports abilities and admires her talent. Flattered by his praise, she feels nervous but happily clarifies that she's confident in her balance. Curious, she inquires about Katsuya's experience in golf. He casually shares that he frequently accompanied his father to the course since childhood. Itsuki, in disbelief, asks if the academy also offers golf classes. His confusion deepens when Katsuya informs him that, in addition to golf, the academy also provides polo for second-year students. Upon noticing Itsuki's unfamiliarity with polo, Katsuya explains that it is a sport in which players strike the ball with a mallet while mounted on horseback. He adds that he is quite fond of horses. However, Itsuki still struggles to grasp the concept and resolves himself to pay closer attention to Shizune's lectures. Their attention shifts to the court, where Hinako expertly showcases her tennis skills. As the match concludes and both players shake hands, everyone applauds Hinako, praising her for making the game look effortless. Others also commend her not only for her athletic prowess, but for serving as an inspiration to other girls. Itsuki is captivated by her, not just her talent, but her remarkable abilities across the board. However, he is somewhat taken aback to learn that she is not the only celebrated athlete in their midst. Miyakojima, who has just defeated her opponent, is also renowned in the world of sports. When Itsuki inquires about the renowned Miyakojima, Karen is surprised to learn that he has never heard of her. Karen informs him that while Miyakojima is not as famous as Hinako, she is a formidable athlete in her own right and holds considerable popularity within the academy. Some even claim she surpasses Hinako in athletic ability. As they watch Miyakojima wipe her neck with a towel after her victory, Katsuya describes her as a cool beauty. Just then, two girls approach Miyakojima, eager to commend her for her athletic prowess. However, when Miyakojima turns to acknowledge them, the girls become frightened and scamper away without uttering a word. Itsuki is left astonished as Karen explains that despite her charm, Miyakojima is rather intimidating. She notes that Miyakojima rarely speaks and always appears tense, adding another layer to her enigmatic persona. Katsuya shares an intriguing rumor about Miyakojima, suggesting she might be involved in a gang or even hail from a Yakuza family. This revelation adds to an air of mystery surrounding her, creating a palpable distance between her and the other students. With a playful smile, Karen admits that she once gathered the courage to approach Miyakojima, but the athlete always found an excuse to slip away, claiming she had something urgent to attend to. Their conversation halts as Katsuya announces it's time for their next match, prompting her to return to her court. As they walk along, Itsuki glances back at Hinako, who is surrounded by eager students vying for a chance to play against her in the next match. He reflects on how being popular seems advantageous, allowing her to bask in the attention of so many admirers, freeing him from worry about her well-being. Lost in his thoughts and falling behind, Katsuya notices Itsuki's distraction and asks with a hint of concern if he's all right. Itsuki explains that he left his shoes in the changing room and runs to retrieve them. As Itsuki steps into the changing room, a wave of elation washes over him when he catches sight of his shoes. However, as he recovers them, he recalls Kagen's words, solemnly informs him about the investigation into his family background, and advises him to keep his distance from Miyakojima, the enigmatic girl at their academy. Without further delay, he makes his exit. In his rush to leave and reach his class, Itsuki inadvertently bumps into a girl. Concern etched on his face, he quickly asks if she's all right, only to be jolted when he recognizes her as Miyakojima, the very person he had been warned to avoid. Stammering with an apology, he tries to sidestep her, but she calls out to him, her voice brimming with determination. She expresses her confusion about whether he is truly Itsuki, her hope gleaming with intensity. Despite his instinctive denials, she asserts with unwavering certainty that he is, without a doubt, Itsuki. Before he can collect his thoughts, she rushes forward and envelops him in a tender embrace, leaving him utterly astonished. Her eyes shimmer with tears as she confesses how much she has missed him. To alleviate the confusion, he shares a story from his childhood, reminiscing about the time spent under the care of the Miyakojima family, a narrative that promises to unravel the mystery binding them together.
Here I am, know it's been a while.